Okay, think about this for a moment. What happens when you have a vision, maybe a project, or even a career path that feels absolutely right? Like this is your calling. But then you just hit a wall, a massive wall of resistance.
Right.
And I don't just mean, bad luck or market shifts. I'm talking about that really exhausting internal pressure, the pull to conform, maybe.
Yeah, or to compromise on things you know you shouldn't.
Exactly. Or just that temptation to give up when things get hard, when the momentum stalls.
And, that internal friction, that point where you feel almost paralyzed, that's really where leadership is tested. It's where leaders are either made or, well, broken.
So that's our focus today. We're doing a deep dive into what courageous leadership looks like when you're facing exactly that kind of opposition.
And we're using Chris R. Velazquez's guide, Rising Above Resistance,
Uh-huh.
as our main source material here. It really tackles this head on.
Right. And our goal today, for you listening, is really actionable. We want to pull out the strategic principles Velazquez offers that connect that deep conviction, that moral certainty, with actual practical leadership skills.
Think of it like a roadmap, a way to move forward, not just kind of survive when everything feels incredibly difficult or, frankly, scary.
It sounds like it's for anyone who feels their calling might be, let's say, bigger than their comfort zone right now.
Precisely. And the book's core argument really is that true leadership isn't ultimately defined by your position or power or even your circumstances.
Okay.
It's defined by the courage to act out of conviction, especially when fear and uncertainty are just swirling around you. It reframes leadership completely.
How so?
It argues that the journey driven by faith, and, for everyone listening, we mean leadership rooted in a solid moral compass, something unshakable that's actually the most resilient path forward.
So it's about moving ahead based on that deep conviction, almost regardless of what the current external signs are saying, like sales numbers or approval ratings.
Exactly. It's a longer game.
Okay, so let's unpack this idea of resistance then. Because naturally, I think we assume it's competitors or critics or the economy.
The external stuff, yeah.
But this material, it sounds like it immediately forces you to look inward first.
It does. And what's really striking is the clarity here. Velazquez argues quite forcefully that the greatest resistance isn't usually around the leader. It's intensely within them.
Ah, so that's the hidden battleground.
That's it. The fear of failure, that internal nagging pressure to get quick approval, or the powerful temptation to compromise your core values just for convenience.
Or maybe just to manage your image instead of dealing with the actual truth.
Precisely. That's a key distinction. Are you stewarding the truth, or are you just managing the optics?
And that's such a critical point today, isn't it? In a world so focused on visibility, managing image feels like a short-term play based on perception.
While prioritizing truth, even when it's hard, is more of a long-term investment in the health of the organization, in morale, that builds real trust.
So the book is saying genuine leadership isn't defined by somehow avoiding struggle.
Not at all. It's defined by the ability to rise above that adversity, but with clarity and conviction. It's really not about being fearless. That's a myth.
Okay, so what is it then?
It's about having conviction that acts despite the fear, acting because of your core beliefs, even when you're afraid.
That's a powerful distinction.
And to give this real texture, Velazquez uses the leadership story of Joshua as a kind of central cohesive framework throughout the book.
Right, the Joshua framework. Now, that's obviously a powerful narrative from a faith tradition, but how do leaders today, say, in a secular organization who don't have that clear divine command, how do they translate that kind of certainty into like a strategic plan or market approach?
That's a great question, and the translation is key. Velazquez isn't necessarily saying you need a divine command. He's suggesting you look at Joshua as, well, maybe the ultimate turnaround CEO.
Okay, interesting analogy.
Think about it. He inherited this huge, complex undertaking. He faced extreme pressure, internal dissent, pushback.
Right, standing at a massive threshold.
Exactly. A critical change point.
Mm-hmm.
And his framework, fundamentally, is about a disciplined method for moving a large group through that change, driven by conviction, not just by having a clever strategy on paper.
So the power came from being rooted in something bigger than himself, a larger purpose or calling.
That's the idea. And it's that tested discipline, that commitment in the face of resistance, that the book translates into practical tools for anyone leading today.
Okay, so if tackling the inner battlefield is step one, then step two must be moving from that feeling of paralysis into actual action.
Right. And that requires specific tools.
And you mentioned the material isn't just philosophy, it offers practical applications. So what are some of these key frameworks? How do they help translate conviction into, well, things you can actually do?
Valesas groups them into what he calls the audit toolkit. And it's strategic because the first step is always self-diagnosis, understanding where you are now.
Makes sense. What's in the toolkit?
Well, two foundational pieces are the leadership inventory and the legacy map. The inventory is essentially an assessment tool. It helps you quantify how aligned your current actions are with your stated values. Who are you really being as a leader right now?
Okay, a reality check.
Exactly. And then the legacy map pushes you to define your long-term impact, not just for this quarter or this year, but who are you aiming to become? What's the imprint you want to leave beyond your current role?
I like that sequence. Know yourself now, then define the horizon. But what about the fear? If internal resistance is the main issue, there must be a tool specifically for tackling fear. You mentioned a fear versus faith audit.
Yes, and this one is critical for breaking through that paralysis we talked about.
How does it work? What's the mechanism?
It helps leaders pinpoint the exact moment fear starts to hijack their decision-making. It usually involves a sort of three-step exercise to reframe the internal narrative that fear creates.
Okay, like what?
Step one is often about identifying the specific lie or limitation that fear is whispering in your ear. You're not ready, or this will definitely fail, or people will hate this.
We all hear those voices.
Right. Step two is about consciously reframing that limitation with the truth of your conviction, or maybe just the objective facts of the situation, countering the lie.
Okay.
And step three is crucial. Choose one specific action that directly contradicts the fear-based lie, something that forces movement, even if it's small. It's about deliberately interrupting that feedback loop of paralysis.
So it shifts the focus from just feeling better to taking a courageous action. That makes sense. Does the book offer tools to keep that momentum going?
It does. There are two others worth highlighting. One is the Resilience Toolkit, which focuses on building endurance for the long haul. Leadership isn't a sprint.
True.
And the other is the Victory Log, which sounds simple, but it's actually quite counterintuitive and powerful.
A victory log, what does that track?
It's not a to-do list. It's a dedicated space, maybe a journal, maybe a file, where leaders intentionally reward small, specific moments of forward progress, or unexpected successes, or even moments of grace or help they received.
Why small moments?
Because when you're facing huge resistance, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of the struggle. The Victory Log deliberately shifts your focus. It helps you notice the steps forward, cultivate gratitude, and build perseverance by acknowledging wins, however small. It turns potential setbacks into evidence of progress.
So using these tools together helps a leader navigate real-world complexity without ditching their core convictions.
That's the goal, to make wise, faith-informed, or conviction-informed decisions, even when you're in crisis mode.
Okay, this raises a key question then. We've been talking about conviction, integrity, faith. Who is this really for? Is it just for leaders and faith-based organizations?
That's a really important point. While the language might have specific roots, the underlying principles are, I think, universally strategic.
So
This guide, these ideas, they're valuable for a really diverse audience.
Yeah.
Yes, faith leaders, but also organizational leaders in any sector. Business executives, entrepreneurs trying to navigate really uncertain markets, community builders, anyone making tough calls where values are on the line.
So it's about moral clarity and decision-making, regardless of the specific context.
Exactly. These are lessons in clarity and courage that apply whenever difficult choices have to be made under pressure.
And this is where it gets really interesting for me, because the book apparently uses specific relatable examples. It shows how these conviction-driven choices actually play out and shape results, shape reputation in the modern workplace.
Yes, the examples ground the principles.
Let's take the CEO example you mentioned earlier, facing a big setback.
Right. So imagine an executive dealing with a significant corporate issue. Maybe a product launch failed spectacularly, or there's a reputational crisis. The gut reaction, the fear-based temptation, is often to control the narrative, use spin, manage the optics to minimize damage.
Protect themselves, protect the stock price maybe.
Exactly. But the courageous choice, the one informed by deep conviction, as Velasquez describes it, might be radical transparency, moral clarity, owning the problem.
Okay, but that sounds painful in the short term. What's the claimed outcome difference there?
It is painful short term, absolutely. But the argument is that the short-term pain leads to a much larger long-term gain. The result isn't a quick PR fix. It's the potential to actually rebuild trust. You get stronger employee loyalty because people saw authentic leadership. You might even create advocates who respect the honesty, even if the news itself was bad.
So sacrificing immediate convenience for lasting credibility?
That's the trade-off.
Okay, or think about another common scenario. A leader dealing with declining numbers, maybe falling market share or dwindling attendance or engagement in a community group. The fearful path might be desperation, maybe trying flashy initiatives that lack substance.
Flailing, yeah. But the courageous path, outlined in the material, is often about converting that decline into an opportunity for strategic outreach, but real outreach, meaning taking the time to listen first. Really learn the true needs, the evolving needs of your community or your market. And only then, acting with a clearly defined purpose and genuine compassion or service, it's about turning that contraction into a focused renewal, not just trying to recapture the past.
That requires patience.
And humility. Lots of it.
And I think my favorite example, because it's so human, is the young team lead. The one frozen by that intense fear of failure, something so common, especially for emerging leaders.
Yeah, that paralysis is real.
Instead of retreating, maybe hiding the problem or trying to fix it all alone, they choose one brave conversation. They actually invite specific, maybe even critical feedback from their team or a mentor.
Right. And look what happens then. By doing that, they don't just potentially solve their immediate problem, they create psychological safety for the whole team.
How so?
They model vulnerability. They show that it's okay not to have all the answers, that feedback is welcome, that failure isn't fatal but actually a point of learning, that one small act can unlock creativity and trust across the board.
So these small human moments are the practical application of rising above resistance. It's not always about grand gestures.
Often it's precisely about those small, consistent choices based on conviction.
And this leads us nicely into the legacy focus you mentioned. The book seems to push leaders to think beyond short-term wins.
Absolutely. It constantly contrasts tactical victories with true lasting influence. You're encouraged to think generationally.
Generationally, what does that mean in a practical sense? Training others.
Yes, training and developing others is a huge part of it, shaping the culture of the organization. It's about shifting your focus from maximizing your own immediate control or results
Okay.
to cultivating the potential in others and building something that will outlast your tenure.
So the focus shifts from control to cultivation.
Beautifully put, yes. The core message seems to be that real, enduring influence flows from obedience to your convictions, from integrity, not just from charisma or tightly managing every variable.
So the leader who truly endures isn't the one who never falls, but the one who gets back up.
Gets back up stronger, wiser, and still anchored in that deep conviction. And that commitment to cultivating others, to building that kind of resilience into the system, that's the legacy that truly lasts.
Okay, so wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you, the listener, right now? The core promise we're taking from Rising Above Resistance seems to be this. The goal isn't just to help you survive the friction and resistance you face.
Which is hard enough sometimes.
Right, but to actually be refined by it, to go through a process where testing gets transformed into your testimony, into your story of resilience.
It really feels like a roadmap from just reacting to challenges to proactively leading through them with clarity, especially when all the noise around you is telling you to play it safe or compromise.
And Velasquez offers a final, very practical challenge, an exercise to create immediate momentum right now, to break past that paralysis point.
Yes, it's designed for urgency without haste.
So here it is. First, take just 5 minutes. Maybe pause this, grab a piece of paper, write down the single biggest fear that you feel is blocking your most important next move right now. What is it specifically?
Get it out of your head and onto paper. Define it clearly.
Then step 2, use that reframing technique we talked about. Ask yourself this question. If obedience to my calling, that core conviction, that sense of purpose mattered more than public approval or avoiding criticism, what specific next step would I take?
What would that conviction compel you to do? Write down that answer too.
And finally, step 3. Choose one small, specific, concrete action from that answer. It could be sending an email you've been avoiding, initiating a difficult but necessary conversation, scheduling a planning meeting, something tangible.
And commit to completing that one action within the next 48 hours, just one step. It's about breaking the inertia.
Taking that first step past the paralysis point.
Exactly. Because if resistance truly is an inevitable part of leading anything meaningful, then how you choose to meet that resistance is what ultimately defines the legacy you build.
That's a powerful thought to end on.
Your strongest influence, your real legacy, probably won't be measured in the size of your team, or your budget, or your follower count. It'll likely be measured in the people you lifted up, the truth you honored even when it was costly, and the courage you chose. Especially when the easier path of compromise looked so much more attractive.